Hello and welcome to what is episode 3 of a brand new series of Family Court: The Inside Story. I suppose it's not a new series when you get to episode 3, but we are going to do our final talk on parental alienation. We've done 2 episodes about it already. This is episode 3, and this is the final one of the trilogy. And I have great pleasure in introducing to you somebody that I have spoken to on social media for quite some time now, who has I can't say a great story because it's a harsh story and not a nice story, but somebody that's got a story to tell. Her name's Maddie, and she's suffered as a child. Am I right in saying that?
I would say, yeah. Well, it started as a child, yes.
Started as a child. So you suffered the effects of parental alienation. We won't go into what it's called and all that. That's for another day. But we'll call it what it is at the moment. So parental alienation, you suffered as a child, and you have a story to tell. Your YouTube channel, is that correct?
Yes, I do. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's
Pleasure.
the first time. This is my first time being on any podcast or anything like that. So I really appreciate it. I was severely alienated from my dad for about 20 years. It started around the age of 8, was really solidified at age 9. And for the next 20 years, it was a really difficult relationship with years where we didn't talk, see him. And over the next 20 years, I didn't spend the night at his house, not even one time, although I have 4 younger brothers who've always had a close relationship with him. So
Yeah.
I was the only child targeted. Anyways, I figured everything out last year, the beginning of last year, and I've finally been able to heal and create a wonderful life for myself in knowing the truth and reconnecting with my dad, rebuilding our relationship. And I was shocked because I never thought that was possible for me.
Yeah.
And I knew that there are millions of other people, adult children, teenagers, people who've gone through this, stuck in these lies, that if they could figure out the truth and reconnect with their parent too, I believe they could access that same healing and be able to create wonderful lives for themselves too. So I went online. Actually, what alerted me to the truth last year was a wonderful video by a former alienated child called Ryan Thomas on YouTube.
Okay.
And he was describing parental alienation from the point of view of an alienated child. And as I listened to his video, it really was if the story he was saying was coming out of his mouth, but he was describing my life. And that's when I really knew it hit me like at once. This is what's happened to me. All the pieces came together in my head. And then I realized at some point this summer, actually, I just started realizing that not many child survivors are speaking out about this, really. I mean, it's Ryan Thomas. There's Amanda Sillers in Australia who created the Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Moe Foundation, which is an amazing organization that funds a lot of research at the University of Tasmania in Australia for parental alienation. And then we have Ryan Thomas. But beyond that, I really have not found many child survivors speaking out. And so
But there will be a lot that don't know, like
yes.
you didn't know. And I suppose watching your videos, somebody might twig, oh, you know what, that's me, that's me. And I'll just say one thing, that it's important to have that relationship with both parents, because I lost my dad in 2016, and that feels like a whole part of my life has been taken away. So life, life doesn't give us unlimited opportunities. So so we've got to take them, really, haven't we? We really have to take them.
Absolutely.
So
I'm really sorry for your loss.
no, it's time. It's gone. I'm healed. but it is, I do miss him, so I can empathize with people like yourself who haven't had that relationship. And but for funny but for it's a different view altogether, isn't it? It's something different. So what I mean, can you
Yeah.
tell the listeners maybe a bit about what was happening before you realized what was going on?
Sure. I mean, it well, first of all, I want to touch real quick, if it's okay, on the you mentioned the other people would be reaching out and figuring it out, and
Yeah.
that's what's keeping me going, because that's already happening.
Good.
I've had many people of different ages and younger people reach out to me saying that this has happened to them too. I've actually created a
Excellent.
support group for child survivors, and now we're up to 20 members. It's
Good.
been really, really great to connect with other people who've been through this very particular and insidious form of psychological abuse. But to
Yeah.
go back to my own story, I think you would have to go way far back, probably before the alienation began, because a characteristic of parental alienation is that before the alienation, the child and the parent had a very close, loving, healthy bond. And that's exactly how it was with me and my dad. I have 4 younger brothers, like I mentioned, and because of that, I think that my dad and I had a very particularly close, loving relationship. I was daddy's little girl. I mean,
Yeah.
he went out of his way to have special activities that we did together. I mean, we were part of a daddies and daughters club, adventure club,
Awesome.
for years, and we were really close. So to have that bond broken was that much more painful for me.
Yeah. So when did that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
When
Age
the
wise.
alienation set in.
Yeah, well, age wise, I'm assuming it came did did your parents break up? Is that how it started?
Well, so okay, parental alienation characteristically begins during a custody dispute or a divorce. And what happened in my case, and I've talked to many other people, this is not just my case, it's happens a lot of the time, where it actually begins at the end of the marriage, before
Yeah,
divorce is even on the table. So being the oldest, I think being the only girl as well, really put me in this position where I was very heavily parentified by my mom. She came to me crying. I was her emotional caretaker, and she was so depressed. I feel bad for her. I felt bad for her, and I would take care of my younger brothers while my parents were fighting. I mean, my dad, he did fight back, and he has taken accountability for that. I mean,
yeah,
I think that it started at the end of their marriage. We're talking the last 2 years probably of their 12-year-long marriage.
okay,
And what that looked like was my dad being kicked out of my parents' room and having to share my room. And
right,
that looked like my parents refusing to talk to each other and using me to exchange messages between them. So they began to put me in the
mm,
middle. And that's not a position that any child should be in, especially at the
no,
age of 7 or 8. And it made me believe, looking back now that I can analyze all of this, knowing the truth, it really gives the child this sense that they are responsible for the relationship. I mean, I remember writing notes to mom and dad. Please hug mom and tell her you're sorry. Please hug dad and make up. And I would give them notes as if I thought that I had the power of influence in their
yeah,
marriage. And that's just not something that you should ever put on a child. But
no, not at
um,
that age, especially.
right. And my childhood was really stolen because of all of this. I had no one for me emotionally. I was actually put in the position where I was taking care of my mom emotionally. And it got so bad. My dad would move out of the house for periods of time and live at the lake house. And I didn't know whether he was coming back. They both made mistakes, but there really was one event that solidified the alienation for me.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you've heard of the term silver bullet divorce.
Yes.
Yes, that's what happened. That's what
Okay.
happened in my parents' case. Essentially, their marriage existed for decades. There was never a call to 911, never any police coming, never any call to CPS, which is Child Protective Services in the United States.
Yeah.
But um, here's what happened from my 9-year-old point perspective. My mom, they would be fighting, and before this event happened, for example, and my mom would come to me crying, very, very depressed, in a very bad mental state, and tell me everything, claim that my dad was horrible and hurting her. And then I would see my dad, who was more aware that you shouldn't be exposing a child to that. And so for him, I just saw his anger towards her.
Right.
So
Okay.
I had this very strong sense of loyalty to my mom because I felt so bad for her. My brothers weren't at the age where they could take care of her or offer her any assistance.
Yeah.
So that really landed on me. But then one day, an event happened. And this is how it went in my 9-year-old point of view, because now I know a whole different side of the story, but I didn't know that then. So
Yeah.
I was driving home in my grandma's car, and we arrived at the house, and I remember her going hysterical, crying, just going hysterical because there
Yeah.
were about 6 cop cars at the house. My parents were both talking to policemen. Little did I know that my little brothers were hiding upstairs beneath their beds.
Oh.
And what happened, though, is that my grandma turned the car around and drove me to her house. And so I
Right.
was not even there for this event at the house. I was somewhere else. I was being brought home. I was somewhere else when all of this went down. But what happened is that I got the events told to me through my mom and my grandma later that night, that my dad was physically abusive, that he was just a lot of allegations that were terrible,
Right.
monstrous. The odd part about it is that my brothers, who were actually there for the event, they
Yeah.
did not have the same alienation effects that I did. And I was not even there for the event.
Is
So,
is it just to clarify? Is this because it's sort of a mother and daughter thing that she maybe felt that she could lean on you more than she could lean on a on a younger male? Is that the sort of the relationship was like that? So she felt like that, or do you think it was something else, or what
I've
your
thought
thought?
about this. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I've thought about this a lot. And um, I think a lot of it's learned behavior. This is generational in my family. So my
Okay.
grandma did this to my mom and to her brothers with their dad. And my mom went several years without talking to her dad. She had a terrible relationship with her dad.
Ah,
And my grandma and my mom are very codependent. They have such a close relationship that my daughter actually thinks they're married. Like, they are the same person. And my mom wanted me to be the third generation of that
right. Okay.
bond. Um, I think in the research I've done, it seems like some parents will alienate all the children, whereas other parents will alienate the oldest child and try to get the oldest child to bring the younger siblings in
Yeah.
to the fold. And so I think that's, despite what caused it to be me, it was me. And after that event, there was a restraining order. The next day after that event, my mom
Right.
she pulled me out of school in the middle of the year, put me in a brand new school, brought me into the school and said to the principal, her dad has a restraining order on him. If he shows up at the school today, he's dangerous. You need to call the police. And she said the same
Okay.
thing to my teacher. And I remember that first day of school. I stayed by the teacher's side all day. I remember my heart was beating out of my chest all day. I was looking out of the windows for the cop cars. And by that point, I had developed very bad anxiety.
Yeah.
And I was very scared of my dad.
Yeah,
And
it's frightening. It's
uh,
frightening for a
right.
child.
So what happened last year when I learned the truth is I asked my dad for his side of the story. He was
Right.
very hesitant to tell me anything. So I actually had he will not talk bad about my mom. Really. He will.
Which is the way it should be. That's the way it should be done. You know?
Exactly. Right. I'm a parent myself, and I can never imagine um, systematically programming my child to believe, for example, that their other parent doesn't love them. I mean, ever since all of this went down, my mom has always said that one day, I love to write. So she's always said that one day you're going to write a best-selling book called The Hole in Your Heart, The Hole in My Heart, about why your dad doesn't love you. So she made me believe that my dad was abusive, that he has narcissistic personality disorder, and that he doesn't love me, can't feel empathy to. So those were the main beliefs, and it was really solidified. It was terrible.
Right. It sounds it. It just sounds to me like your mum desperately wanted to follow on. You, like you said, it's generational. Your grandparents or your grandmother did it. Your mum's done it. She probably hopes you'll do it.
Well, that's
Well, of course you
it's
won't.
interesting. It's interesting because it is generational, but that's not an excuse.
No.
And you would hope that you grow up and you become an adult and you can analyze how you were raised, and hopefully you feel very grateful and overwhelmed by the love that your parents have shown you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in some cases, you feel you're unable to comprehend the treatment, the lies, and it's been difficult. But last year, I realized the truth in talking to many different family members, extended family members, who all confirmed for me that what actually happened is that my mom went to see a divorce attorney, a
Right.
very expensive divorce attorney, who advised her to call 911, instigate what would appear to be a domestic violence event, and have a domestic violence charge,
Right.
to get a protective order against my dad so that she could get all of this is in order to get more custody and child support. To have him thrown out of the house and to remove the kids and go live somewhere else, which all happened. We lived at my grandma's house for months. I
Right.
didn't see my dad for I don't even know how long. My memory is a little hazy because of all of the trauma, but this is exactly what happened to my dad. And because of that, he was advised by his lawyer that he should not go to court. He will not win in court. In fact, he would lose a lot of money in court.
Yeah.
And I believed the other side of the story for 20 years. I thought my dad was abusive. It was a constant question that I had, which was, how can my brothers have loving relationships with my
Yeah.
dad if he's such a terrible and abusive man? And, my mom would tell me, your brothers just aren't perceptive like you are. Your brothers aren't critical or aren't deep
Yeah.
thinkers like you are. They just put your dad on a pedestal and worship him. So it was almost like she was trying to stroke my ego into believing
Yeah.
that,
He was
that
evil when he
yes,
wasn't.
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. The way you described that, then I've witnessed in the cases that I've dealt with. I've seen it. I've seen it um, where one parent will do exactly what your mum did, in order to gain control over that child, even full custody in some cases, when the other parent has actually done nothing wrong, but you said about a lawyer telling her to to ring the 911. Well, over here it's 999, and the lawyers or solicitors over here are telling their clients to do that in
It's
order
disgusting. They don't think
to
about the ramification. I would like to talk to
no.
these lawyers, and I would like to say, do you think about the children after the custody case, the divorce is finished? Do you think about the effects on the children? Because when this happens and the children actually believe that their parent is abusive, that's
But
going to damage the relationship between the parent and the child.
it's not just that relationship with the parent and child either, because I think it's I mean, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I think psychologically, when you're lying in bed at night and you've been told all this stuff about your daddy, you end up kind of frightened, because when you shouldn't be, and you're worried, stressed, worried about you. And if your mum's told you, if a mother tells somebody, the child, lots of things that the other person, the father in your case, has done and said, and all that, it makes that child, I think, frightened and scared, and doesn't, and you think about it, because we do that naturally as humans. Every night when we go to bed, when we switch the telly off and distractions are off, the first thing when we lie down in our beds, first thing that comes into our mind is things like this. So if you're in a situation like that, that is going to be, I'm assuming, you tell me if I'm wrong, but that's going to be the first thing that comes into your head.
I mean, it wasn't just at nighttime, it was all the time. This caused
Yeah.
me to I was very, very sad. I always wanted my dad to love me. The past 20 years, it was the biggest pain that I carried, that my dad didn't love me. I would always think, if your own parent doesn't love you, how would anyone else love you? And so
Yeah.
you're right about the fear, but there's also extreme sorrow. And as a protective mechanism, I think that comes out as anger towards the targeted parent. But beneath the anger, the facade of anger, is just sorrow and fear. And this
Yeah.
is so ingrained. I remember my parents are dentists. And I remember last year, after I figured everything out, I went to my dad to get my teeth cleaned. And as he was checking my teeth, he's my dentist, I realized I couldn't look him in the eye. I still couldn't look him in the eye. I couldn't hold any eye contact. So I challenged myself, and I was like, staring contest, Dad, to try to challenge that and change my physical response to being near my dad, which is to have a fast heartbeat, which is to be breaking out in cold sweats. And this is
Right.
all fabricated. None of this needed to happen. But the
No.
sorrow too, I mean, when I was 9 years old, I was brought to a therapist because everybody was concerned, and I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and depression.
Yeah.
I have since I've learned the truth and been in therapy now a year and a half, healing and reconnecting with my dad. um, I uh, I also have the same doctor that I did at that time, so it's interesting. She
All right.
said,
Okay.
so my doctor, my therapist, everybody has said that I never I never had anxiety or depression or any of the other diagnoses I was given over the years. I actually have had the whole time what's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder
Yeah.
from daily psychological abuse that I was unable to escape from.
Yeah. And I suffer from that myself. And I think there's a point so let's talk about normal relationships now as adults. So the point at which you realize, if you're in an a true abusive relationship like I have been, then at the point when you actually twig what's going on, you feel so unloved that actually you start questioning your reasoning for being here on the planet, and therefore I admit I had suicidal thoughts. If it wasn't for the pictures of my children all over my flat, I would have done that. I know I need to stay alive for my children, because they need me. But there's been a point in my relationship when it fell apart, and I felt so unloved that I felt that I shouldn't. You said it before. Felt like you shouldn't be loved. You don't deserve to be loved. Sorry. And that's I think is I mean, that's hard, isn't it?
Well, here's what happens when you figure out the truth. And I wish more people would talk about this.
Yes, go on. Let's talk about that. What was it like realizing the truth? Because you've got two emotions, surely. Then you've got anger towards the person that was doing it, your mum, and you've realized that actually your father did love you.
Okay, so figuring out the truth, it was a very complex process. I think that there are several factors that came into play. I can say, had that not happened, I don't think I would have figured it out. And one of those factors is becoming a mother myself.
Okay,
But
congratulations.
thank you. Thank you so much. Also, I think another factor was being the scapegoated child. I was treated differently than my brothers, and the treatment was not great. I saw the worst sides of my mom, and that gave me, I think, more insight into how dysfunctional the family system really is.
Yeah.
But to talk about how it felt or my process in figuring it out, it's very overwhelming,
two
confusing.
emotions as well, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, there'd be two emotions. There'd be one emotion of sort of anger towards the person that was doing it, and the other one, which is a very obviously a very nice feeling, is realizing that you were loved all those years, and you are still loved.
It's even more complex than that, because you have originally the first thing that I went through was extreme confusion. There were months, weeks, I think, where I was gaslighting myself all day long. I knew this had happened to me, but I didn't want it to. I wanted to go back to the way things were before, because you can think of the anger. And yes, I felt more anger than I've ever felt in my life last year. I started running every single day. That's how I got my anger out. And I wouldn't have been able to start my project last year. I was so angry. I'm not angry anymore. I am sad, but yes, the anger at the parent who has done this. And then you also have, at least, and I had, and I think this is very common for people figuring out the truth, is anger at yourself. And guilt and shame for the way you've treated your targeted parent, even though you were used as a weapon to hurt them. You still, I know that logically, but at least in the first few months, it can be hard to live with what you've done, what you haven't done. The 20 years lost is something that I'm still grieving.
Okay.
And then you have, yes, the hope of having a parent who really does love you.
Yeah.
But the grief is so complex, because
we have to question the type of love that your mum had for you. I suppose that was going through your mind as well. Is if she loved me so much, why would she do that?
Precisely. So you have, for the alienated child, they essentially write the parent out of their life, the targeted parent. And believe that they're bad, they don't love them, or whatever it is. And then when you figure out the truth, you realize you had everything backwards. And it's almost as if you're now losing your other parent, or at least who you thought your parent was.
Yes.
And to be frank with you, I always felt as if something was off with my mom.
Right.
From the time I was very young. But
But
I didn't have my dad in my own mindset, so I was willing to accept any crumb of love, any conditional love, anything I could get, because I didn't want to self-orphan myself.
yes.
So the hope, though, that I want to talk about that, because there's so much darkness in this type of abuse.
Isn't
I
there?
did. I'm sorry.
I said, isn't there just?
Yes, I did. There was a point, though, and I've talked about this in one of my videos. There was a point where I invited my dad to go work out at the park last year before I moved across the country.
Okay.
um, so I invited him to go to the park. I usually never invite him to do anything. This is a big deal. I was anxious. I ended up telling him everything that I was made to believe about him. And at that time, I was trying to deprogram my brain from
Yeah.
believing these things. So it was scary. It was scary to say these things to him.
Of course.
Dad, I've been told you have narcissistic personality disorder. I've been told you don't love me. I've been made to believe you have no empathy, all of these things. He was shocked. He was horrified. It was way worse than he's told me that it's way worse than he could have ever imagined, than he ever thought. And
Yeah.
we sat down on the bleachers, and he said, well, first he said, you really believe that I don't love you? And I said, well, yeah, Dad, I've believed that for as long as I can remember. He said, but the boys know I love them. And I said, well, she didn't tell the boys anything. She didn't make the boys, she didn't do this to the boys. It was just me. And he said, which broke, it was such a special, but in honestly magical night, because I was able to really access the love for my dad for the first time in 20 years.
Good.
I said again, I was like, I believed you didn't love me. And he said, well, with the way things went and the way you rejected me and were so angry at me over the years, he said, I believed you didn't love me either.
Oh.
And I said, no, Dad, I've always loved you, and I've always wanted you to love me. And he said, well, I've always loved you and wanted you to love me too. And I
Oh.
realized it had all been one huge triangulation, one manufactured triangulation. You see?
Yeah, you're making me want to cry. But it's a happy cry. It's kind of, you know, it's sad for those lost years. It's really sad, but it is so wonderful that you found a way to finally find that happiness, that love that you had for your dad.
It
But it's
was,
sad still.
it was for me. I remember, we sat on the bleachers, and he reached for he was holding my hand. We had never held hands in so many years.
Oh,
And I remember that I was on cloud nine. I was so happy. That's one of besides the births of my children and meeting my husband, getting married, that is one of the best nights of my life. I will
yeah.
never forget that moment, to the point where I got in the truck to drive home. My dad called me immediately. And after we talked a little bit more, I got my voice recordings out on my phone. I know this is such a nerdy thing to do, but I had to dictate. I wanted to dictate everything that had just happened, because I never wanted to forget a single moment of it.
Oh,
I I never Here's the thing. I never dreamed of something like that happening. I never hoped that my dad would love me. I always believed, since my mom instilled that in me at age 9, I always believed he did not love me. I never hoped that he would. It was a given that he didn't. So to have that happen, was to me a miracle. And in fact, I've actually, on my project, the Anti-Alienation Project, I've interviewed a parental alienation expert, Dr. Burnett, and I asked him in that interview, I said, in your estimation, if alienation extends into adulthood, what percent of children do you believe will figure it out? And he said that in his honest estimation, 10% will figure
Yeah,
out the truth,
I can see why he said that.
which is
Definitely. I mean,
atrocious.
it is.
Atrocious.
It is. But the good thing, I think the real good thing is that there's the people like you who have worked hard to get yourself a profile on social media. You've not, you're not sat. You could have taken this moment and just run with it and thought, I've got my dad back. That's it, done. I'm happy. Sod everyone else. But you didn't. You've really, promoted what's gone on, and you've done your YouTube channel. You talk on Twitter. You've got your projects. So you haven't rested on your laurels. You're actually going out there to improve that 10%.
Oh yeah, I am. The funny thing is, I didn't plan all of this. Like, I didn't sit down and come up with a plan for
No,
what to do.
nobody
It's
does.
just it's grown and developed naturally, and I've found that it has been a crucial step in my own healing process to be able to help other people who are going through this as well.
Yeah.
And I've created a team now. We have a team. It's 4 of us, child survivors, and we are working to turn the Anti-Alienation Project, everything that we want to do beyond the YouTube, which is just me. We
Yeah.
want to make a nonprofit organization, and we have so many exciting things in the works to, first of all, get through to the children who've been through this and wake them up to reality. It's traumatizing to learn the truth, and there's a bunch of betrayal trauma that comes with that, but I truly believe it's necessary in order to fully heal. And
Yeah.
alongside that, to offer support to people in our position, because you can go on Facebook, you can go on other platforms and find hundreds of support groups for the targeted parents, and
Yeah.
that's necessary too, that's good too, but I couldn't even find one for child survivors in the whole country of the United States. And so I created the first one. I hope it really grows. I've gotten great feedback from people so far, but we're working on other things too. And this should all be coming out within November 14th. I think we are launching our website, which will have a lot of resources for both targeted parents and child survivors. We hope
Okay.
to really start educating and informing the public.
Have you got the website address yet to tell people, or is
Hopefully
that
by the no, it'll be up by November 7th. We'll have it up.
okay? So for anybody that's not following you on Twitter, do you want to give them your Twitter handle, as you call it, or your
Sure.
X handle?
Yeah, X. So it's it's Anti-Alienation P, and that's only because they had a limit for the amount of characters you could use. But
Yes.
I'm most active. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok to try to get through to the younger kids. I'm on YouTube more than anywhere else. I'm on
Right.
YouTube. And
And how do people find you there?
you can it's the anti slash or dash the anti dash alienation project on YouTube.
Okay.
But I do have the URL for the website. It's just not going to be able to be accessed until November 7th, and that's the anti-alienationproject.com.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's just making people aware so they know where to go. Obviously, aware that the time it's not going up just yet, but at least it gives them somewhere to go. And I think the amount of listeners we get on this podcast, and surprisingly, last season, 48% were from the US.
Oh, wow.
And
That is quite a few.
I wasn't even talking about US law. I don't know enough or barely anything about US law. I know about UK law. So it's kind of strange to find that such a high percentage of my listeners were from the United States, but it shows you that there are issues there and people just want to hear what's going on, don't they?
Oh, family court here is a joke. It's terrible. I mean, I've even thought of the, why do we have family court if it's causing more damage than good? And I mean,
Same here.
I really think that I'm surprised, with all the presidential elections we have every 4 years, why is family court not a talking point during election time? Like, it is so bad. In many ways, it actually promotes alienation. And here's an example. In the United States, if you're going through family court, if you have a custodial arrangement, say, and you're, in my case, take my case, my mom convinced me not to go with my dad. So
right.
He withheld me from my dad. So I did not go with him during his every other weekend and Wednesday nights.
Right.
So because of that, because I did not go with my dad during the times my brothers went with my dad, my mom got even more child support.
Right. Okay.
So there's a relationship between the time spent with the child and child support. If you don't see your child, you have to pay more child support.
Yeah, it's the same in this country.
Which promotes alienation.
Yes, it does. It does. And I see cases like that where it seems, a parent does say certain things, and I mean, there's parents out there that go to great lengths to ensure that they don't have to pay the child support. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's and the state gets a percentage of it.
Do they?
Yeah, this is all about profit. If this abuse, we can call it whatever people want to call it.
It's abuse, though.
Oh, it's severe abuse. I didn't even have a chance to get into all of the detrimental effects that it has on the child, but I can rattle off a few, and most of them are self-destructive. I mean, you've got obsessive compulsive tendencies, severe loneliness, low self-esteem is across the board, suicidal ideation and attempts, eating disorders, self-harm, shame, guilt, anger, depression, anxiety, and then this being in this state of fight or flight and having this daily psychological abuse for, in my case, over decades, it actually affects your physical health. You might know, I'm sure you know that if you have CPTSD, so it can cause autoimmune conditions. It can cause issues with your blood pressure, your pulse, it can cause so many different, it can literally shrink your hippocampus, the part of your brain that's responsible for memory. This is not taken seriously enough at all. And it really does cause the child to, because they're made to hate their parent unjustifiably, it does cause the child to internalize that hatred for themselves. Like, if half of who created me is bad, I must be bad too. And that is really, I think, what causes all of these self-destructive effects on the child. And it can even go the other way too, which is hard to think about. But some children will develop conduct disorders. They will get into criminal behavior. And some people, alienated children can have can go on to develop personality disorders themselves, because I didn't mention this before, but studies have shown that 95% of alienators, and we're talking more about the moderate to severe alienators, 95% have personality disorders.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm witnessing it myself at the moment, and I'm sure if I just mention just two things, I'm sure that you'll turn around and tell me that that is pure alienation. But my friend's daughter comes home, and because I have a good relationship, it's my best friend, and all right, it's a female, but males and females can be friends. Without it going any further. So she's my best friend, and she was my best friend when she was with him. And the daughter comes home from his and said, "Daddy hates Phil," and she said, "When you die, I'll go and live with Daddy."
Oh my
And
gosh.
amongst other things, but they're just two very small examples, but it's alienation. It's pure alienation. But he's accusing her of alienation, by the way, because she delayed contact for 20 minutes because the grandmother that was going to pick her up was causing, or well, hammering on the window, hammering on the door, just like going nuts. And she just wanted her to calm down before she sent the daughter, and it was like 20 minutes. But he's now claiming that she's the alienator.
Yeah, that's that's the exploitation going on in court. That's part of the
Yes.
what's happening right now is you know um, some people are exploiting the term parental alienation in court in order to try to get their children back, or to get more custody or whatnot.
Yeah.
And that's why we see groups like Shara coming out with their conclusion, which is that we need to call it child and mother sabotage. But the problem is, studies have shown that this happens to mothers and fathers.
Yes.
Fathers equally, if not more than mothers. And but
Yeah.
I went through parental alienation. I went through this abuse, if we want to call it. I did not go through child and mother sabotage. So my thing with why I did a reaction video on Shara, and honestly, I'm pretty appalled at this,
Yeah.
because they should have, if anything, have named it child and parent sabotage. But here's the other thing, Phil, and I'm kind of curious about what you think about this as well. Do you not think that if we start calling it child and parent sabotage, that exploiters will begin to exploit that term in the future?
I'm in agreement that whatever you call it, the ones that are there to exploit it are still going to be there. It doesn't matter what you call it, actually. Um, I've witnessed in my time doing family law, I've witnessed many mothers, and I don't know whether the fathers. There's lots of them about, but I don't know whether they. I mean, I know that me personally, I could talk about lived experience. I was scared of telling anybody that I was abused, because I'm a male.
Sure. Yeah, I
And
understand.
I'm wondering whether there probably are a lot of men that come out, but the stats, because men are maybe a bit more quiet about it, or won't say anything because they're scared of people thinking they're a wimp, or but I made it. I would never hit a woman, and I've had a woman hold a knife to my throat and tell me I'm about to die, but I would never hit. I never even hit her.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. That must have been terrifying.
well, yeah, it was, and that's why I suffer CPTSD. But the thing is, I was still scared of telling anybody. I think the only person who knew was my mum, I think that may be the case is that we get a lot of mothers that will speak out, but we don't get as many men speaking out, and maybe that's why the figures are somewhat skewed. But you're right in what you say, that it doesn't matter what you call it, it will it will be exploited. Of course it will.
Yeah.
Isn't everything in life,
I'm sorry, what?
isn't everything in life? If somebody's got an opportunity to exploit something in order to benefit themselves, then there is a risk that people will do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is exactly why I come from it from the child's point of view. So I see a
Yeah,
lot of experts trying to argue, or researchers, activists trying to argue that we need to call it some other thing. We need to call it, I've heard so many different terms. Let's just call it
yeah,
coercive control. Let's call it domestic abuse by proxy. Let's call it now child and mother sabotage. And I see everybody so up in arms about what to call the form of abuse that I suffered, that millions of other children are currently suffering. And where are the people trying to actually help the children? Where are the
yeah,
people trying to get the children out of the I would call it the psychological they're being held psychologically hostage,
yes,
and no one is trying to help them. So I come from this child's point of view, and I what helped me learn the truth last year was learning the term parental alienation and what it is. And the term itself, parental alienation, really resonated with me and allowed me to be like, oh, have that aha moment. Yeah, that's
yeah,
it. If I had heard the term last year, child and mother sabotage, I would not have figured out what had happened to me. If I had heard the term domestic violence by proxy, I probably wouldn't have put it together with my situation either, because that just
no,
paints the parent as the victim and the child as the abuser, which is just ridiculous. So
yes,
no one is actually thinking about what term will allow the children to figure out the truth. Because as of now, the only way the children are getting to the other side of this abuse is by figuring out the truth themselves. And you know what's
yes,
crazy? This is even crazier, Phil. Professionals, therapists, psychiatrists, any professional will tell the parents to not tell their child that they're being alienated. In fact, therapists, I've talked to therapists now who tell me that in their practice, they're not allowed to tell the child what is happening to them. Let me ask you this, can you think of another form of abuse, sexual, physical, whatever it may be, where a therapist or any other type of professional who's the child's advocate is not allowed to tell the parents or the child that they are being abused?
no, that's crazy. I can't think of any, to be honest. It's absolute nuts. Um, it's scary. I mean, there's so much abuse going on, and that in itself is scary.
And
But
you have
this
to wonder
is,
why. You have to wonder why. And the more that
I
I'm
don't
wondering
know.
why, the more I'm thinking it all comes back to the money.
I
If
think a
you
lot of it does, yes. But then there's times when, I was abused, but there was no financial benefit for her abusing me. So it does happen without money, but money is a big thing. I, I agree with that.
when
But
you think about parental alienation and the years that most of these targeted parents spend in court, and by the end of it they don't have any money, they have
yes,
lost their home, they've lost everything. And if parental alienation, or whatever you want to call it, this abuse was able to be identified and treated swiftly and surely, well, there goes the billions of dollars of the divorce industry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yes. I can't disagree with you. I mean, I think obviously America is much bigger than the UK and far more people, so it's happening to far more people. But the fact is, abuse happens, and abuse should not happen. It's just, I can't regulate in my mind why anybody would want to hurt somebody so much.
Well, it's twofold. So the alienator has it's mostly two things, two reasons why they alienate their child. And the first thing, and I can say from personal experience and research and talking to dozens of other child survivors now, and here it is, it's first of all, number one, they have a very, very strong rage towards their ex-partner. They think they've been, or they believe they've been wronged.
Mm-hmm.
They're so angry at them that they're using the relationship with their child. They're taking that away in order to hurt them. It's a revenge type of scenario. And
Yes.
maybe that's part of the reason why I was targeted, being the only girl, being daddy's little girl, having that special relationship with him. Maybe that's why I was targeted. I don't know. But that's for the first reason why these people do this. And the
Yeah.
second reason why is because they want the child all to themselves, to control them, to isolate them from everyone. The alienation, by the way, in severe cases especially, it's not limited to the targeted parent. Usually they isolate the child from many other people, including siblings, extended family. If this goes into adulthood,
Yeah.
even one spouse. I mean, I have a good friend whose mom is helping her ex-husband alienate her children from her. She hasn't seen her sons in years.
Oh, sad.
And so the important thing to remember for anyone listening as well, you cannot underestimate these severe alienators. They have personality disorders, 95% of them. And the important thing is that severe alienators, they never stop alienating. They will never take accountability for what they've done or apologize. It's almost like it's in their DNA. They will never stop alienating. And this is something for child survivors to really, really understand and come to terms with. Because if you keep your alienator parent in your life and you know the truth, you can expect that they're going to continue to try to alienate you from maybe your targeted parent again, but also other people in your life. And that can include your children down the line.
Yeah.
That can include your siblings. I'm currently going through this, and
Yeah.
from across the country, by the way.
Really.
Yeah.
Is that what your relationship with your mum's like now? Then, so it's just a continuation.
I I don't have a relationship with my mom anymore.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And I'm trying to learn how to love someone who, but I, at the same time, I don't know to what extent I actually knew her.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was, it's years of
I will say I'm not angry at
faking
her
it.
anymore. I really am not angry at her anymore. I feel bad for her. I'm
Oh,
worried about my siblings, and
right.
um, I'm desperate to not repeat the cycle.
Well, you've learned from. I mean, often. Well, we talked earlier on about how things can get passed through the generations. It happens and it keeps happening. But there is also that thing, and it's the same as when you have a child for the first time. You are learning how to look after a baby because you haven't got people around. You haven't got a team of people around you telling you how to clean the bum of a new baby. You have to learn how to do it yourself. And when the second one comes along, you learn a bit better. But you do learn things off your parents when it comes to how to look after a child if there's more than one of you in the family. And you do learn that off your parents, but you also learn what not to do. So what when they make mistakes, your parents, and it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, my dad made. I hate sprouts. for me, they're the wicked spawn of Satan. And my dad, my dad would make me eat them, and I would be physically being sick. And then one day he thought it would be funny, and I was about 7, to give me a spoonful of mustard.
Oh,
And I didn't know, he told me it was custard
oh gosh.
because it was yellow. And he said, "Oh, you tasted custard? It's lovely." And from that moment on, I can't, I don't even like seeing a jar of mustard. But I've learned that I should never do that to my child. I should never do that to my children. Give them a spoonful of mustard.
Right.
Give them a food that they do not like. So I've learned from a bad thing. I've learned a good thing.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's what
exactly
you've
right.
done.
That's what I've taken away from this whole experience.
Yeah,
There's no way that I will let all of this happen and won't use it to help shape me into the best mom I can be. I mean, I know so many
yeah,
mistakes to avoid. I think that all parents do their best, or most parents want to, good parents try to do their
yeah.
best. So there, I will make
Yes,
mistakes. I don't
we
want
all
to make
do.
mistakes. I will make mistakes though, because I'm human, but
Yeah,
I'm determined to not make those mistakes for sure. And you know, it's hard not to swing the other way too far too. I want to land it somewhere in the middle, on the middle path, but um,
I'm.
definitely it has given me a lot of knowledge of what not to do.
Yes,
My parents did. I mean, I did have a lot of good exposure to certain things. Like they took me out of the country often, and you know, they exposed me to certain things I'm really grateful for. So I find myself taking everything from my childhood that I loved and trying to implement that with my own kids, and then learning from everything that went wrong.
yes. I'm sure you're doing a great job. Um, you certainly, but you certainly did a great job in raising awareness um, for children that have been victims of this kind of abuse, because any kind of abuse is wrong in its entirety. And like you said before, it doesn't matter what you call it, it's still going to be exploited. People are still going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and children are still going to be affected. So
Yes.
people like you raising awareness and explaining to people what it actually is, I think that's the key. It's not.
Yeah. There's a really big difference, and Dr. Burnett is great about this. In the interview I have on my channel, he made a difference. He likes to make it clear that there's a difference between alienating behaviors and parental alienation. So sometimes I have comments that say something like, don't all angry people during a divorce say bad things about the other person, you know? And that would be classified as an alienating behavior. But parental alienation is a it's more characterized as a campaign of denigration.
Right.
The alienator is dead set on making their child believe these things about their other parent, and to dead and just will not stop until the child chooses to reject them completely. I mean,
Right.
it is an obsession, and in the most severe cases, which my mom, I would say, is this type of alienator, it's actually delusional. They
Yes.
believe these beliefs themselves. So if you think about it, if a parent has these delusional beliefs and they're telling the child all of these things, that in their brain, the parent really is telling the child the truth. So
Yes.
so people ask, how does the child just believe all of these things? Well, first of all, a child will believe uh, often the lies. If it's not a pathological thing and the parent is just lying, the child will believe it, because what's harder to, or what's easier to believe, that one of your parents is bad, or that one of your parents is making you believe your other parent is bad because they hate them and they want to isolate you.
Well, you wouldn't have a clue as a child.
Exactly,
That's the
but
point.
that's exactly right. And you wouldn't have a clue as a child, but add the element of them being delusional and believing it themselves. They're telling you their own truth in their mind. I mean, there's no way a child is gonna question that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of people in a lot of different things in life, they if they lie enough, they do
Mm-hmm.
start believing it
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and therefore it doesn't feel like a lie anymore to them or to the person that they're telling it to, because it sounds like it was real
I
because they believe it.
I know. It's crazy. That's why I call them the pathological parent. And that's
Yeah,
not to be mean at all. It's just
just
pathological being
true, isn't it?
they believe this fabricated version of reality, and they force their child to be operating in this fabricated version of reality. And
Yeah.
children deserve to know the truth.
Yes, they do. And you know what? Listen, this when we spoke before this podcast started, you asked me how long it would be, and I said probably about 35 minutes to 45 minutes. Well, this last section we've recorded is 35 minutes,
Yeah.
and we've got the other two to add on to it. So we've been talking for way in excess of an hour, which is fine, because it's been an interesting chat. And at the beginning, you were slightly concerned that you haven't done a podcast before, so you didn't know whether you'd have enough to say, I suppose, and what have you. But you have, and you've done. You've said some great things. You've said some things that will get maybe some of our younger listeners to think if they are in the midst of that. But you also would have said things that would get adults thinking, oh, that sounds like what's happening to me.
Well,
And if we
thank
can just get one person, just one, that means it's been worth it.
absolutely. I'm really grateful that you reached out to me. I you know, I really respect you, because um there are so many people who who have differences of opinion, and
Yeah,
they either can't talk to the person, they can't have a civil conversation, they refuse to be friends or associate with them. And uh I I think that's really detrimental. I mean, it's gotten to
yeah.
the point in society where people view each other as enemies if they have a difference of opinion. And a lot of the time, your differences of opinion, that's what makes life interesting. But not only that, that's what keeps us in check as humans. And I'm not afraid to admit that maybe I'm wrong about some things. Maybe I
Well,
need to
yeah,
learn about some things, and maybe I need to
yep,
change my mind about it. Um, but
we
to
all do.
Yeah, so I really appreciate you being willing to hear my story and to be open to what I have to say. And
It's,
um, I
it's
know that
been
there are a lot
interesting.
of people on Twitter who just want us to fight,
Oh, they
but
do. They do. Should we have a pretend fight at the end so they can cut that bit out and post it on social media? Aren't they going to be analysed and annihilated on YouTube by somebody with 70 followers?
yeah, I know
Apparently.
there's sadly there's just so much vitriol in this space. I think there are a lot of traumatized folks, and I understand it.
Oh, there are, but
But I
no need to get
appreciate the
personal, is
people
there?
that, yeah, I appreciate the people who are willing to have a difference of opinion, and let's talk about why.
Yeah,
Let's tease it out.
yeah. And to be honest, our opinions aren't that different, really, because I don't disagree with anything you say as far as what's gone on. It's happened. You've lived it. It's lived experience, and it happens to. It's not just you. It's happened to. It happens to quite a lot of people, and you speaking out about it is maybe the like I said before, the reason why somebody will all of a sudden think, oh, that's me.
Yeah. Or maybe they
Uh,
already know it's happened to them, but they don't have any access to support. I mean, that's what we're
yeah,
trying to do. We're trying to give them support, because to me, it's kind of atrocious that, you know, we've known about this for what, over 30 years now, that this
yes,
abuse happens. Not that it's only been happening for 30 years. It's probably been happening forever.
hundreds,
But
yeah,
um in 30 years, you know, I could be, if I were 9 years old right now,
yeah,
I am very certain that the same thing would happen, and I would
yeah.
not receive help. My mom would go to a lawyer who would tell her to do the same exact thing that she did 20 years ago. I mean, this is still happening, all of this stuff.
It
Um,
is, it is.
so that's,
You know, it's it's solicitors have to take and barristers or lawyers, as you call them over there, have to take some responsibility and have to stop advising people to do abusive things, whether that's telling them to be an alienator or whether that's telling them to pretend to be the other person's being an alienator. It's got to stop.
I mean, in the best interest of the children, if you're talking
Yeah.
about that, it's a
Yes.
joke. It's a joke to them.
Absolutely.
And it needs to come back to the children. It's this, to be so severely abused while your brain is actively developing, while your beliefs about yourself and the world are developing, and your
Yeah.
attachments are
Yes.
developing. There,
Disgusting.
it's so devastating, and it
It
really
is.
impacts every aspect of your life.
Well, before we finish, what one thing that's very important to say, and that I'm sure that all the listeners, it doesn't matter what their views are, will echo this: that I am glad that you finally got that opportunity to um, spend that time with your dad, especially that day when you held hands for the first time. And you know, there is a happy side to this story. It's
Oh,
not
for
all doom
sure,
and
for
gloom,
sure.
and I'm so glad that you got that. And I hope that other people listening will use this. And if it is happening to anybody out there, then there are resources that are gonna. You got a YouTube channel of Maddie. You've also got a website coming mid-November.
Yes, we'll have a bunch
With
of
support.
support. We'll have campaigns where we're getting through to alienated children. I'm not allowed to say too much about that yet, but once it
No,
comes
but
out, it's going to be great. And then we already have a support group. If any alienated children or former alienated children, and when I say children, I really mean adults who were in the children's point of view.
yes,
If you've been through this, please email me. I would love to talk to you and see if you would like to join our support group. There's a really, really awesome therapist. Her name's Tina,
yeah,
and she works with alienated children and their parents in Florida. And she's been graciously volunteering her time to do an hour and a half long Zoom meeting twice a month. So we
okay,
actually it's free. It's free of charge. Um,
that's good.
and we are rolling out in November. We're going to be rolling out a new mentorship program. So it's
Right, okay.
kind of like AA, how you have a sponsor.
Yes,
We're going to create a mentorship program where you can actually choose a mentor who is a few years along in their healing journey to really be there for you and help
that's
you
good.
answer questions and be there, because this is so traumatic to figure out that you've been living essentially a lie for years or decades. Actually, some people can go a whole lifetime and not figure out the truth. And this is the case with my grandpa. I mean, he died 2 years ago, and he died with all four of his children hating him.
Oh, I'm so
So
sorry.
that's why I do this. That's why I'm doing this. This is it's family trauma. and you can't quantify the negative effects. I mean, this will last. This can last generations. It can spread throughout
Yeah,
society and touch people. It's just destructive in all
it is.
aspects.
It is, and you know, keep going with what you're doing. Please don't stop. And it doesn't matter what people call it in the end. Doesn't really matter. You know what it is, and hopefully, people listening to you, people watching you on YouTube, you've certainly got a lot to say. You didn't think you did, but you have, and it's been probably my longest ever podcast.
Oh my gosh, really? I'm sorry.
Yes, but that's good. No, that's good. That's good.
Oh,
I don't
that's
mind
funny.
at all. People will listen to it, and if people get stuff from it, and you know, I know there'll be people out there that'll analyze it. Perhaps I'll get told that I've gaslit you somehow. Don't know where, but they'll find. I'm sure they'll find something. But you know, I think it's been great, and I think it's been good to have somebody explain what it is. We've, you know, in the first two episodes, if you like, I had experts. I can't say on either side because they know each other, and you know, and they've spoke together. But you know, I've had someone explaining one side of it and someone explaining the other. But now having somebody that's gone through it explaining what it is and how it's caused and how it's made them feel, etc., etc. That's a really good thing and a really probably a really good way to end the sort of trilogy, if you like.
For
Um,
sure. Yeah. I'm really honored that you have me on here. Thank you.
well,
Um,
I appreciate you being on. I appreciate you. Yeah, you spilled your heart. You made me feel I was going to cry halfway through it. So, yeah. So I mean, it's great, and I really appreciate being on. So thank you so much,
Thank
and
you. I really appreciate it.
we will speak to you again maybe in the future, but
Yeah, we'll
or
keep in
maybe
touch.
you'll have me on your YouTube channel.
I was going to ask you, actually, I was just thinking about that. I was wondering if you'd ever be willing. If
Oh, of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Also, I just want to say for any people out there like who were going through it as a child, the source of hope, there really is so much hope once you figure out the truth. It's overwhelming and it's terrifying, and you will go through a
Yeah,
whole host of probably every emotion that a human being can feel. But it wants you can't, I often say this in my videos, you can't heal if you don't know what you're supposed to be healing from. And once you learn the truth, you know what you're supposed to be healing from, and you finally can. So
yeah,
for anyone out there listening, just please hold on to that fact, because that is that is true. And there is a wonderful life out there that you can create for yourself.
absolutely. Well, that's a great way to finish. So, listen, thank you so much for giving up so much of your time.
Thank you for hearing my
I,
story.
I really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure that it'll be one of the most popular episodes. So, thank you very much. Take care of yourself, and
Yeah, for sure.
say hi to your dad for me.
I will. We talk almost every day, and it's just so great
Good.
to rebuild that relationship, and it's been something special, really special. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, we'll end there, and I'll be back for episode 4. Sorry, I'm losing count. Episode 4 soon. I don't know what subject it'll be next, but uh, we'll wait and see. And thank you again, Maddie. And yeah, I'll speak to you again, no doubt. You've been listening to A Dark World, Family Court, The Inside Story. This is season 2, and you can listen to all episodes via www.a darkworld.co.uk. Thanks for listening.